All right, welcome to another Cool Rock podcast. I'm Steve, and thank you for joining us here today. So a couple weeks back, I had the amazing and talented Leilani Kilgore on the podcast, and I found out a day later from a couple listeners that for some reason, the last 15 minutes or so of that episode went missing. Shut off, truncated, nothing was there. This was at all platforms, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, etc. I quickly re-uploaded the episode, and it appeared to go everywhere. But I found out that on some platforms, the feed with the revised episode didn't automatically show up at all platforms. So, since our audience has grown a bit in the few short weeks since that happened, and because Leilani is so awesome, and we had a great conversation about her music and career, and because Spin.com recently had a big feature on her, here it is once again in full, my interview with Leilani Kilgore. Enjoy! All right, welcome to another cool episode of another Cool Rock podcast. I'm your host, Steve Roth, and this episode is really cool. Actually, aren't they all? I think so. So back in April, I had the pleasure of going to Nashville to attend the annual Rock and Pod conference. It was my first time there, and meeting so many cool rock and music podcasters was what finally kicked my lame ass into gear to finally start this podcast, which I'd only been talking about doing for many years, far too long. And that was also where I got to see this episode's guest, Leilani Kilgore. The conference included tickets to see Tuck Smith at the Eastside Bowl in Nashville, and being a big Tuck fan, and after seeing the Eastside Bowl on dozens of tour itineraries through the years, I wasn't going to miss this show. Now, I had no idea who the opener was, and that was blues rock guitarist, vocalist, and songwriter Leilani Kilgore. Leilani and her three-piece band just killed. My wife and I were simply blown away by her stage presence, her powerhouse vocals, and especially her guitar playing. Anchored in the blues, Leilani has got serious chops. She can shred and light up a fretboard, but there's also some real soul to her playing. It's not hyperbole to say she's a great guitar player. She's also a great person to talk to, and I really enjoyed our conversation. It's pretty candid, and I found I could relate to several things about her life, her struggles, and how and why creating music is so important. She mentions the words catharsis and expression and the importance of that. So you know what to do. Immediately after listening to this episode, you need to check out Leilani Kilgore. She's put out several singles so far this year. The latest is called High Low, which has this incessant snaking riff, a killer solo, just filled with fury and attitude, and some of my favorite lyrics of the year like this one. You're spending all your money like a Hollywood honey. You're playing the part, but no one came to the show. Joker on your neck, you awkward little wreck. I'd love you if it wasn't for the face that you stole. That is badass. And I also wish I asked her about that, that lyric and that song in particular. In any case, all her music is fantastic. The singles she's been releasing this year are leading up to the release of her new album, and you can find all her music at Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, etc., etc. And you can keep up with what she's got going on via Instagram, Threads, and at YouTube. You can find her at Leilani Kilgore. That's all together, and that's LeilaniKilgore. All right, let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Leilani Kilgore. Hi, Leilani.
Hey, Steve. How are you doing?
I am well. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we were talking beforehand, and I'll put this all in the intro as well. I'm relatively new to your music and you. I saw you back in April when I was down in Nashville for Rock and Pod. You opened up for Tuck Smith, and I did not know who you were. And my wife and I were just floored. We were just, I mean, I love harder rock. I love guitars. I love blues and melody, but I also love a great show. And you are just amazing, you and your band. And I want to talk about them in a minute too. So right up front, let me just give you some huge props there because that was so much fun. We bought your CD. We listened to the whole ride home. I've been diving into Spotify. We met you after the show. You were great. It was fantastic.
I'm so flattered to hear that. Thank you so much for saying so. I mean, yeah, right now we're in that weird bracket where people either know who I am and what to expect, or have zero fucking idea of what that's about. So every person I can win over, in a live show, that's proving my business model bets correctly.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it too. I mean, that's really the best way, no matter what, digitally or not. That's really the radio or not, and that's really how you need to do it nowadays. It's almost guerrilla marketing, if you will, hand-to-hand combat. It's one person at a time, each show, and just keep spreading the word.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
So you're in Nashville, hailing originally from LA.
No, actually.
Or was it the West Coast? I'm sorry. Somewhere I read that somewhere, and that must have been incorrect.
Oh no, you're totally fine. There's recently been an uptick of fake profiles of me.
Oh no.
Claiming all kinds of cities of origin that I've definitely never lived in. I am from the West Coast, though. I grew up in Washington State and then moved to Southern California when I was 13 or 14. So
okay, so
you're pretty close.
All right, as long as you were totally. I'm not too
it's not
embarrassed.
Like Belgium.
Yeah, I'm not too embarrassed. You did spend time in Southern California. So what's, I guess, your origin story? When and how did you know that this is absolutely what you have to do?
Yeah, it's kind of convoluted. I'm at a point in my life now, being 28 and I'm constantly trying to learn new things about myself and just the human experience. And through just my own reflection and probably therapy as well, I've learned about myself that growing up as an adopted only child, validation was really important to me. And my parents raised me in this really just so pro music household. Their first date was the Rolling Stones on Halloween during the Voodoo Lounge tour, which I actually have the shirt from that concert. And my dad grew up hanging out with Billy Gibbons and seeing, Stevie Ray Vaughan at these house parties in Texas. And my mom, her dad was a visual artist, and she was a little bit less musically inclined, but she still had great taste in music. So for my entire childhood, I was just raised on classic rock and blues and like Kenny Loggins and the Beatles, and just, everything that any child who wanted to delve into good music could hope to grow up on. But eventually, it became pretty obvious to me pretty early on that playing guitar was the coolest thing you could do. And I really wanted to connect with my dad on that because he was such a guitar player fan. So that's kind of what got me started in it. And he was so encouraging and very supportive, and tried to find the right gear for me and the right teacher and all this stuff. So I think a combination of being raised in a household where music, especially guitar playing, was so revered, on top of my own kind of sense of self-expression, just falling into that so easily as a player. It really it set a pretty clear course. And even before I even started touching a guitar, I was the most, I was such a dramatic kid, throwing myself around the living room and jumping off of furniture to the Nutcracker. And there was clearly some kind of performance-based career path set up for me.
We have a couple of things there in common. I was adopted as well. Did you mention you were adopted? And
yeah.
I was adopted as well, which certainly I think sets you off on a journey, emotionally, whether or not you even go to find your biological parents or not. And I never really had any interest ever, but when I was going to get until way later, but I was going to say, it's kind of sets you off on a journey of even before you realize it, of kind of discovering things about yourself. You just know that how am I trying to say this? You just know, I don't want to say you're different, but you know that put it this way. I grew up not, being used to, I have obviously don't look anything like my family. you know,
Right.
and you don't really
Yeah,
realize that. And you realize, I think when you get older and you discover more things about yourself and you kind of go on this journey, especially in the arts, especially with music, which can be the fuel for so many of those things, then you kind of see what, where your differences isn't the right word, but you see kind of what differentiates you from your family. And that's a good thing, I think. But in your case, I think it sounds like you had both the perfect world where it was nature and nurture, right? I mean, you were surrounded by
definitely.
music all the time. Your parents were so supportive, and they knew music.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned the looking, different from your family. I found out very, very early on that I was adopted. My parents had that conversation with me at like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
And
same here.
I remember very like vividly being in a grocery store line with my mom. I was probably 7 or 8, and the cashier said, "Oh, she looks just like you, your daughter." And I got very offended. This whole thing of, but she's not my mom. But I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better family to. I do have a close relationship with my birth mom. I'm lucky enough to have that, but I couldn't have asked for a better family environment. And it's funny when you grow up and decide to start pursuing something like music. You obviously always have friends that are in bands and stuff like that. And the older I got, and the more I really just held fast to this idea of what I wanted to be successful at, the more I realized how integral it is to have family and especially parents that support you on that path. I mean, there's so much that I owe my parents, as far as just support and belief goes. So, yeah, I feel very, very lucky to have had that as my background growing up.
Yeah, you just reminded me real quick. I always knew I was adopted. I was told when I was very, very young. And when I was a real young kid, if you remember the TV show The Brady Bunch or ever saw it or heard it,
Yeah, yeah,
I had blonde hair and I insisted when I was a kid. I just had this imagination. And I was born in LA. We lived in Southern California and in the Valley. And I was insisted that I was the fourth Brady son that they couldn't keep. I was like positive of this. So, but that's my issue. So no.
but, but that's a great story.
So I've read, and now let me preface by when I say I read when I was researching you and everything, knowing that there's some wrong profiles out there, but I read that that as a teen you were into Green Day and punk stuff and
Big
what
time.
was right? Okay. And so when did you kind of discover and the blues guitar and blues rock what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just as previously mentioned, like just having kind of an odd emotional path growing up as a kid. I really gravitated pretty quickly towards uh, pop punk and punk rock and screamo, like that kind of thing. That for me was like it was just so angry and heavy, and it
There's an
was
there's an energy
great.
there, right? It
Loved the
channels you.
energy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved the aggression. I loved the riffs. How like just the way that they growled. But so when I started my first band in high school, that was what we did. We did punk covers, but I was still at the same time I was still playing, you know, blues jams and getting my ass kicked and like just being so embarrassed to be on the stage trying to solo my way through a pentatonic scale poorly. That was the best education I could have gotten rather than these covers. And so I knew that I liked playing guitar and I was trying to get into blues. My dad really wanted me to connect with it, as did the private instructor I worked with for my first real, electric guitar lessons. He was like, you got to learn pentatonics and you got to learn B.B. King and Freddie King and study these. And I just like, I was kind of getting it. I wasn't really wasn't really getting it. And then, and I will tell this story till the day that I die. My dad brought home Joe Bonamassa's album Dust Bowl one day. And he used to buy
Oh,
these CDs when he was out grocery shopping, come home, and we'd all sit down and listen to them. And I hated it. I couldn't stand that record.
really?
Oh my God, I was begging to just go up to my room and read and listen to my chem and just not endure this, whatever this was anymore. But, Joe Bonamassa is a pretty, memorable name.
Oh
And
yeah.
fast forward probably a couple months or maybe 6 months later, I was home alone, flipping through channels, and I saw Joe Bonamassa live at Vienna on the television program. And I was like, oh, okay, let's check this out. Never in my life had I seen anybody play an acoustic guitar like that, ever. And so immediately I was hooked. And then lo and behold, we're going to this blues festival that used to happen, Doheny Blues Festival. I don't know if you remember that.
I've heard of it.
down on
Not,
Doheny Beach. It was great. It was my first time or second time going, and he was one of the headliners. And rushed to the barricade for GA, and just stood there, 16 years old, like gripping this fence, just like so excited. And I started like crying during his set, but it wasn't because of the lyrics. It was because of what he was playing on guitar. And seeing and hearing and feeling somebody emote that way with an instrument, that's what got me. Like that's what drew me in, because especially as a teenager, you're going through so much, and I was like undiagnosed depressed and ADD at the time, and like just I was in like my whole little own storm of unprocessed emotions. And to see this way that you can communicate that, and this form of catharsis and expression, I was like, God, that's it. That's pulling everything that I've been working on and trying to figure out. It's just pulling it together. And that's still like a huge thing for me. None of my solos that I play live are the same. They have little points where there's similarities each time for myself as an anchor, and for my band to, have a reference as to where we are. But every single show is a different thing. Every single day is a different, feeling. So that to me was the just the anger that just pulled me right into what I do now.
that's a great story. Let me ask you this. Was there a time when you got into the blues, did it click when you realized? Because when I was younger and I would really got into music, there was all the things I loved that was really current, like, and that I knew of based on stuff on the radio. So like Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, all that stuff. Then later on,
Yeah.
I got into the blues and different guitar players and go, oh, this is where it all started. It was like this connection where it was like the light bulb going off where I went, I had no reference point before what I heard on the radio, right? Or albums that I
Yeah.
would see in the store or I would buy and stuff like that. But then later on, it's like, okay, now I Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, BB King, all the, and then even through, went to Stevie Ray Vaughan and folks like that. It was like, okay, this is massively influential and huge foundation. And did you get what I'm saying? Did that kind of click for you?
100%. Absolutely. I mean, so yeah, Joe was the one that really made me sit down and take playing, understanding the fretboard seriously. But my appreciation for blues and my interest in it actually came from the White Stripes, which,
Sure.
kind of makes sense for my generation. That was like such a big thing, such a revolutionary, band to have in mainstream music at the time. And really what kind of got me into like taking electric guitar seriously was, Jack White's riffs they were like kind of metal, because they were so like overdriven and distorted and just like catchy. But I watched a neighbor of mine brought over that documentary Might Get Loud, with
Yes.
Jack White and Jimmy Page and The Edge. And I think there's a part in there where Jack White's talking about how everything goes back to, you have to study your heroes, right? And so that's how I got into like Son House, who is just like a total terrifying badass, and like, Blind Willie McTell and Muddy Waters. And so, yeah, I think, Joe was the one that made me really take playing seriously, but Jack White and the White Stripes, that was the influence that really got me to really appreciate and find a lot of curiosity in blues.
Awesome. Yeah, Jack White, I remember that documentary and how they, in particular, for me, it was so interesting because you had The Edge and Jimmy Page and everybody just all had this connection. But I mean, Jack White to me, yeah, there's that hard rock, that sort of metal edge to it, but he really harkens back to a lot, right? A lot of his riffs and just his soloing where if you could place that guy back in 1925 with an acoustic guitar and people would, do you know what I mean? He would have fit
100%.
perfectly, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's that whole part of the documentary where he just improvs. I think he just improvs this blues song on like some really old, like 1920s acoustic archtop or something like that. And
Yeah,
you could have just stuck that on a 45 and pulled it from the pre-World War II days, and would have been just the same.
exactly. So far this year you've released, as I was digging into your catalog and I bought, where is it? I have it here. I bought out at the show down in
Yeah, yeah,
Nashville.
yeah, yeah. One of the
Bought that.
last. I got to restock those
Okay.
actually.
And
Yeah.
then when I dug into Spotify and saw was really getting into releases from about 2021, 2022. And I
Yeah.
noticed there's been a bit of an acceleration. Four singles so far this year. And I just saw before we got on the air earlier today, you gave a little preview with freshly painted nails, I think, on your Instagram page. You gave a little preview to Early Grave, which drops next month. Was it High Low dropped in May, just last month? So
May 30th, yeah.
so it feels like that there's a real strategy there, keeping people engaged, keeping people into the music. Is this all a prelude for a new album?
It is.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll preface this with just saying that being an independent artist is it's so tough, especially when I mean, yeah, I went to Berkeley for 2 years. Guitar was my principal, and performance was my major. And being the first time away from home, as far away as I could possibly manage to get myself on a
Right.
scholarship, I went as far as I could possibly go and lost my mind basically for about 2 years. And so, while there is so many resources out there like Berkeley courses and online and YouTube channels where you can learn how to navigate the music industry and really what it takes on the backside of things. I did not come into this with any of that knowledge. I just thought I just need to be an artist and play guitar well and write songs and work on my singing. So when I started out with my first couple of singles, as you mentioned, those stemmed from COVID. I was supposed to be on a cruise ship playing rock covers, in Iceland when
Oh,
COVID hit.
wow.
And that was my career, trajectory. I've been doing it since 2018, go out every couple of months, disappear off the face of the earth, come back with a paycheck, and then just go back out again. And I was pretty okay with that. But I was starting to get a little bit restless. COVID hits, suddenly I have no job, I have no gigs, I have nothing. And I think for a lot of people, it was a bit of a wake-up call for those of us who decided to reorient, where we were in life. So the first two singles I put out, Triple X Moonshine and I'm Gonna Leave You, I recorded with a friend who was supposed to actually be my band leader on my next contract out in California because we had nothing else to do. And after that, somebody reached out to me about a management deal. And I was just so excited. I just took the first offer, and they were really, really lovely people to work with, but started to get very distracted with another client who was having a lot of success on TikTok. But their whole strategy when they were trying to help me, build my career and my catalog was don't do an album, don't do an album. Just do singles. That's the market right now. Just do singles and hold people's attention and always be promoting something. And that's fine. Especially I think it's starting out as an artist, first and foremost, it takes a massive amount of cash just to fund an album. I mean, I self-fund everything, and the record that we did in January was astronomically expensive. But it got to the point where when you're playing out live shows and that's what you're, trying to build your business off of, people want to know, where can they buy your record? Where's the
Right.
record? So when I dropped, it's kind of a mutual thing, coincidentally, but when I left my management agency, they dropped me to go focus on the other artists they'd been working with. Um, I I spiraled. I absolutely spiraled, and I was going through some personal challenges on my side of things in my own life. And I didn't really have an outlet. I wasn't in therapy at the time. And spent a lot of time just trying to not feel this sense of failure that I was feeling. And eventually, because I had no other way to handle it, started writing. And by the end of the year, kind of started picking up the pieces. And God bless my band. I mean, especially, my guitar player, John, they were such a rock. They could see what I was going through and just kept being very patient and just waiting for me to be ready to reapproach things. And finally, when I did, I came out with these, just a list of 12 demos out of the 40 or 50 I had ended up doing at 4 o'clock in the morning for months on end. And I said, I think maybe it's time that we do a record. And so sure enough, January, we got in the studio for 3 days and spent 72 hours tracking 12 songs.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the last day of tracking for me personally was a 12-hour day. And it was intense and it was insane, but between myself, my drummer, my bass player, and my guitar player, we all had such a sense of belief in these songs that I had come up with, and what they signified for me as an artist and for us as a project. So yeah, High Low is the first single off the record, and we had been sitting actually with Snake in the Tall Grass, Feeling Lucky, Trouble in My Bones. We've been sitting on those demos for about a year by the time they come out because I just had to take 2024 off. So it was nice to get to kind of reinvigorate things. Snake in the Tall Grass just hit 125,000 plays since
I
March,
saw
which is
that. That's
insane.
amazing. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, we got lucky enough to be playlisted on Slash's Modern Blues Rock playlist on Spotify, and I don't know how that happened. Somebody asked me, they were like, "So, like, who did you pay? With what money?" I'm independent. With what funding? So we've got a lot of success in that, and then High Low has just also taken off, and that was kind of a for me, putting that out there and then following it with this next single, Early Grave. These songs, as well as the third single that will be coming out in August prior to the album, these songs are kind of a gentle way of informing people, hey, nothing's really changed. I'm still very much myself as an artist, but I'm not just one genre. This album especially is such a broader exploration in how I want to express myself without feeling like I need to be told to stick to one sound or appeal to one audience. So yeah, so High Low is the first single off the record. Still pretty much in the same vein, I think, of what we've been releasing recently. But the next single, Early Grave, especially with that little preview that I posted, it's kind of a different direction. And I'm really excited for people to get to know this kind of more eclectic and less genre specific side of me.
Sure. Eclectic's an interesting choice of words there. When I was listening to the songs and just not knowing necessarily the full backstory of what you just told me, but I kept a word kept popping in my head that these songs were so soulful.
Thanks.
There was just something deeper about them, and not to compare to the previous stuff, but yes, it sounds like it's a great evolution. I mean, with the backup singers and different things you got going on in there, there's some really great dynamics, and that word just soulful. Just, I mean, I know from seeing you live and also hearing the other stuff that, I mean, you can play. I mean, you can shred but I mean, if people have not seen you live yet and they're finding you on Spotify or on Slash's thing, it's like, okay, there's this whole other element here, which I totally love and is so impressive.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, honestly, with a couple singles that we put out prior to prior to High Low, I was lucky enough to, I mean, we did, I think 6 songs at Ocean Way, which is where those sessions, those singles are coming from, those sessions. And I was lucky enough to pull, Reese Winans, who's just, he played keys for Stevie Ray Vaughan, double inducting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Incredible keys player. He played all the organ on those
Oh
tracks.
wow.
And then Jade McRae, who is one of Bonamassa backing vocalists and just like the most incredibly lovely person and so talented. She did all the BGBs on those. And I was so proud to get to hear my music developed in that way. But with the album, we're kind of taking a little bit of a different approach. Any BGBs that you hear is either my band or myself, partially for budget reasons, partially for time reasons, and partially because we really wanted this to just be like our project. Not that there's anything wrong with adding other elements, but with this album, we've always tried really hard, me especially, to strive for something that you can still deliver on stage and have it sound the same. So we actually kind of kept things a little bit simplistic with this record. There's no keys. There's a ton of BGVs, but it's all us.
Right.
And that's nothing more than just us wanting to see if we could just do it ourselves. In the future, budget and time allowing, I would be so honored to work with Jade and Reese again. But yeah, I am grateful for the quality that they added to those previous singles because you're right, it is very soulful and it's very, I don't know, rich, and that's something that like I just love to get to hear added to my music.
Right. I got to back up for 1 minute because you said something early on and in our conversation, and then you brought it up. It reminded me of this again when you were just talking about COVID and the challenges, and then afterwards and where your headspace was, and that was, and you used the phrase catharsis and expression. I mean, that that seems like that's like been the through line for you, right? As a creative artist.
Yeah, absolutely. That just comes from, I've always been a fan of my best subject in school was always English. That's where I excelled. And I love the art of writing. I love the art of expression. And, learning to play guitar and learning to sing other people's songs, I really latched on to how certain artists would express themselves in different ways. And I never had a really good skill set with expressing myself as a kid, just verbally. It wasn't something that I was really talented at. I never really felt safe enough to express myself sometimes. So a lot of my writing leans really heavily on me finding ways to convey things and paint pictures and tell stories of experiences that people hopefully can relate to. Because it's honestly, I think, as a creative individual and somebody that's trying to be an artist in their own right, I think it's probably been it's so important to me to be authentic in the way that you express yourself, and I've really leaned on that, and I work hard at staying true to that.
Well, it definitely comes through in the music, and obviously, not every artist can do that and do that well.
Right. Yeah. And I hate to say, but I'm definitely a judgy person when I listen to other people's lyrics. If it's about like the same, like some,
Yeah.
going out to the bar and that's like your third song about taking shots of Jack and that's all you have to say for yourself, I have a really hard time latching onto it. But at the same time, I can also appreciate a good melody. So
Yeah.
it's fair play.
I totally hear you. So speaking of bars and going out, I when I saw you open for Tuck Smith in Nashville at Eastside Bowl back in April, I mentioned before I was completely blown away. Your band is incredible. Your drummer and bass player are like all torque and horsepower.
Yeah.
Those guys are amazing. Your guitar player, I loved how you guys played off each other. Who are those guys? And above all else, it looks like you guys, and I saw this online as well, it looks like you guys have a hell of a lot of fun and a lot of laughs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so lucky. Funnily enough, actually, the drummer that played that night he's not my usual drummer. Typically the guy that I consider to be our first call and part of the band is David Keith, who plays with Richie Blackmore and the Nelson Twins. And then when he's off the road, obviously we steal him as much as we can. But the drummer that played for me that night was actually somebody that I've known since I moved to Nashville 8 years ago. His name was Phil Leone. And he was actually, I think, the first drummer I worked with in my own band here when I was just getting started, like 20 years old, couldn't even enter some of the venues I was playing because I wasn't old enough to be in there, kind of thing. That was Phil. And Phil was just such a wonderful and is a wonderful person. He's still one of my best friends. And, it's been 8 years we've been in each other's lives and we still just pick up the phone, months apart at a time and just give each other shit. And it's like nothing's changed. So luckily enough, Phil was available to play that show with me. And I think that's the first time I've played with him in probably a year or so.
Oh wow.
No rehearsal.
You would never have known it.
I know, because he's such a professional that way. And luckily we do have a long-standing history. But yeah, no rehearsal. He just showed up and I said, I trust you. I know what you can do. So that was Phil, who's just an absolutely lovely person. And definitely, if David is ever unavailable, he's usually my first call. But my bass player is the youngest of the band. His name is Josh Rice, and he hails from St. Louis. He actually lives across the hall from me at the moment. And he's just this goofy, easygoing, lighthearted, just wholesome individual with great music taste and an incredible ear for bass parts. And he's honestly an excellent guitar player, an excellent singer, and an excellent songwriter. And I always tell him he's probably better than me, but we're still trying to push him to, you know, do something with that of himself. But I'm very lucky to have him as my bass player and my backup singer as well. So that's Josh. Actually, there's a track on the album called I See Stars, which was supposed to be the next single until we changed last second for mastering purposes. And there's a harmony on I See Stars. It's a really emotional song. It's just like it builds and builds and builds into this huge thing. And it's the one that always makes me cry every time I listen to it. But the demo originally had my own vocals stacked, like 6, 7 probably harmony parts. And we were in the studio tracking it. I think it was the last song, and I did like the main vocal take. And Josh was packing up, last one there, and he comes in and he's like, "Hey, dude, I want to sing some BGBs on this." And I was like, "Okay, vocal booth is yours. Go for it." He goes in there and comes in with the most angelic, like falsetto, high harmony, like notes that I had never thought of hitting before. Nails it one take, comes out and goes, all right, dude, see you at home, and leaves. And I was like, you motherfucker, like, I can't do that. I can't go in there and do that. So anyway, so that's Josh. He's incredible. And then my guitar player is John Weiscarver, who, as he just reminded me, has been with us for exactly 4 years now. And we met in the Nashville scene, and I needed a guitar player for a gig, and he, asked if he could do it. And he's been on board ever since. And he's truly the one that keeps me in check because I'm a hot mess. I have a hard time with time management and scheduling and remembering to do things. And he's the one that's like, hey, just checking out on the set list for this day and that day. And like, what's our point of day contact? And he's really the one that makes sure that everything is actually operating smoothly rather than just a bunch of us climbing into a van and having a good time. So
Right on. Yeah. Bands to me are just, they're incredible little fascinating subcultures, right? I mean, because
yeah.
they really are. I mean, especially when you look at veteran bands who have spent decades together and they were in a van. It reminds me, there's a great documentary on the Ramones called End of the Century. And you come away from it, it's like, these guys spent all this time in a van and they did not like each other. There was all this
Yeah.
inner band stuff, and it was just like, how the hell did they do that? It must have been torture, yet they did it. So obviously the biggest flip side to that is going out with people that you really can rely on, number one, and who you can rely on musically too, but also that, I mean, you enjoy being around, right? Enjoy being with.
It's so important to me. I mean, I've been in so many different work scenarios with different artists and bands and been in charge and been a hired gun. And it just, for me, ultimately, especially with my own music, um, I need to trust who's on stage with me, first and foremost, because I've already got enough to worry about in my role. Am I singing the right lyrics? Am I standing in the right spot? All these things. Am I hitting the right changes? But more importantly, because for me, music is it's such a personal thing. It's such an authentic thing. Um, it's so critical, and not everybody operates this way, but to me, it's so critical that you can get along with the people that you're on stage with off stage as well. Because in my opinion, not only does it make it easier to just enjoy what you're doing, but it also translates on stage. If you have a friendship with people that you're on stage with, you don't have to pretend to like them. You like them. You don't have to pretend to be having a good time or laugh at something that they do. You're genuinely having fun. It translates better. And honestly, because so much of what we do is instinct driven, like my bass player and my drummer need to have a personal relationship to feed off of one another and do things, like little things like match fills in the moment. You
Sure.
have to have some kind of thread there that has like a personal connection and friendship, in my opinion. If you don't like each other on stage, I genuinely think it affects the music. So I'm really lucky that we've finally settled into this four-piece situation where we are all good friends. We hang out outside of the gigs. We send each other the dumbest memes all the time in what's supposed to be the professional band chat. It's we're all moving into a house together at the end of the year, so we
That's
can
amazing.
be closer for rehearsals and content and writing and so I feel really blessed. Not everybody operates that way, but to me it is critical that you like the people that you're working with, because if you don't, it's gonna come to a head.
Right. It reminds me years for a long time. I spent most of my career in the record business, actually working for different labels and doing marketing and all this stuff. And I remember always being disappointed when I would meet bands and I would find out that those guys, they never talked to each other even before they got on the stage. They didn't even see each other. They were in different buses, whatever it would
Yep.
be. And just one quick anecdote. Several years ago, I was backstage. We were doing something. I can't remember what it was, but I was backstage at a Def Leppard show, and I had the pleasure of meeting Def Leppard. And we just started talking about stuff. And Joe Elliott was like, I don't even know how we got on the subject, but he's like, we actually still like each other. We all travel in the same bus. And
Thank God.
I'm like, you guys there's 30,000 people. You don't need to travel in the same. He goes, no, he goes, and he started naming a few names. He goes, yeah, those guys, they hate each other. They're never, and I'm not naive enough anymore, but it was always kind of a little bubble bursting there. You want
Absolutely.
you want that emotion to be real, right?
Well, you
Because
want to
it does
believe.
transcend the music.
You want to believe you want to believe what you're seeing, right? It's this thing of like everybody gets on stage, they all act like they're best friends and have all these, like jokes and things like that. And I think it's so disappointing when you find out that it's an act, because you want to believe what you're seeing. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, when you go on stage, people want, I think it was Lenny or somebody said, like, people want to see you dressed like a rock star, like you're better than them. They want to see something where you believe 100% that you deserve to be on that stage. Finding out that people don't like each other, especially in like a huge band like Def Leppard not, but like Aerosmith, I mean, their history is
Right.
pretty rocky. It makes you can still appreciate the music, but it's like, God, you just wish that you could have like a harmonious ending to the
Yeah.
story.
It's funny because everybody they're playing to is is just so invested and enjoying themselves so much, and it just pains me to think that the person that's performing isn't enjoying it as much as maybe they used to be for what all these other
Yeah.
reasons. And even if you could fake it, it's just, wait a minute, you are doing the dream. Everybody in that audience wants to do exactly what you do. And yes, I
Hmm.
get it. Life gets in the way. There's all sorts of issues and problems, and bravo to anybody who can still get up on the stage every night, night after night, regardless of what's going on in the personal life, because it's you're living and you don't want to disappoint people. But it's obviously always better when when there's some real emotion and happiness to it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
So I want to talk to you about gear real quick. What guitars do you usually play? What's your go-to axe? And how do you get that thick, soulful tone? Yet when you're soloing, it's just cuts right through. I'm impressed. And I am not a gear nerd. I know a few things about guitars, but I'm always curious.
Yeah, sound guys hate my lead sound. So I mean, yeah, I always grew up a Gibson fan. I was always a Gibson fan. Les Paul's, just such a sexy guitar to me, just badass looking Les Pauls. So I started with actually technically I started on a Strat. And I love a Strat, don't get me wrong, but something with the humbuckers, the way that it runs through my rake, it just gets fat and nasty. And that's what I like. I like the attitude. So started with really with Les Pauls. I also had a 359 was I think the first one of the first guitars I bought with my own money. It was just super nice semi-hollow body. And a lot of people are like, are you sure you don't mean 339? Nope, it's a 359. Look it up. They exist. But when I got my first Les Paul, that was like I was all about it. So played Les Pauls for a long time and then uh lucky enough to call Bonamassa a friend of mine. I was doing Broadway full time during COVID when I was not doing my own gigs, and I mean, you're doing thousands of hours of playing a year, at that point. So he would give me his prototypes for his signature series and just have me go take them out and test them, and see how I liked them. So that got me into my triple pickup Black Les Paul, my Black Beauty reissue, which was the first like really just animal Les Paul and loved it. Had a Bigsby on it, super badass. I did have at that point, I did have a couple strats at that point already, and then pretty shortly after that, I got a Fender Parallel Universe Telecaster, and they only made them during 2020, and it's black finished with binding, triple pickup humbuckers, and a Bigsby on a telly, which is killer.
Wow.
Um, Played the snot out of that thing. I mean, it looks like it has like some kind of horrific skin disease, the way that the finish has been chipped off and belt rash. And I
It's
mean,
got character.
it's got a lot of character. I do say at least it's not as viable as a stolen instrument because it just looks disgusting. No one's gonna want to touch it. But that was my workhorse for a long time because it had that Les Paul sound, but it looked mean, like a black telly. Now, I mean, I still use that to this day. I got my first Gretsch a couple of years ago when I was on tour with Aaron Coburn, and just like a $500 Gretsch, but I loved the way the pickups sound. And now I'm a Gretsch and Fender endorsed artist, which is awesome. So at the moment, because I only take about two guitars out on the road at a time. That Gretsch that's sitting that back there behind me, if you can see it, it just got
Yep.
released. It got released actually last month, I think, but I got given that model prior to its public sale availability. So I use that one quite a bit. I did also just score this Epiphone. It's called a Les Paul special or custom, but it's technically an SG, but it's triple pickup. And then the previous owner stuck like a Chet Atkins like thin Bigsby arm on it, and it actually stays in tune, which is amazing. So I scored that for like $500 on Facebook Marketplace, which is the best deal I think I've ever made. So I kind of take those two out right now, and then I run everything through a twin. And that lead tone that you're talking about is a Friedman BEOD, usually with a tube screamer under it for just a little bit of extra drive. And I have something called a dumbolator, which is a dual pedal. It's supposed to be modeled after like a Overdrive Special by Dumble and a Steel String Singer, I believe. So you can just dirty it up really easy and kind of EQ it. And that, for the most part, is my rig, other than like a wah, a delay, a flanger, and probably some sort of like crazy, unmanageable fuzz.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, it does sound great. So I could easily talk to you for another hour, but as Thursdays are the new Fridays, I won't do that. But before we get out of here, what's the next few months? What do you got upcoming? Where are you going to be?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you, Steve, it's tough when you're handling everything on your own. It's a lot of places to juggle. I'm also in other projects. I play with other artists, and I have a part-time day job at a bar, and so managing everything that I can to the best of my abilities. We are working on just a proper fall tour for the album release. The album will be coming out, I believe, in the beginning of October. So we are planning a whole south to north tour to promote that. It's going to be called Tell Your Ghost. And other than that, we have a pretty quiet September. We have a festival in July, a festival in August, and a couple of dates around those. But really what we're doing is it's so important to me to treat this album with the opportunity that it deserves. So working on music videos, getting the next two releases up and running, content, PR, and scheduling that fall tour. So I would say keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. An indie artist is truly an entrepreneur. You have to be, right?
It's
You're doing it
exhausting.
all.
It's all that they don't tell you. Like, you got to be a social media manager. You have to know how to copyright things, know how to work like splits, know how to register royalties, but also understand that distribution is really important. On top of that, register your engineer, register your copyrights, register your ISRC, get things playlisted. Do you have enough window time on the release? Can you promote it for pre-saves? But can you book your own shows? Do you have an EPK together? I mean, it's a disaster for somebody with ADD. It's my worst nightmare. I'm begging somebody to come and please take over this.
As
So
a as a fellow ADHD person, I find I have to write everything out I have checklists, just little boxes. I have to write lists every day, and okay, did
I
that,
love
and
my
then
lists. I just forget to do them.
yeah, same here. Same here. All right, Leilani, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. I had a lot of fun.
Me too, Steve. Thank you so much.
You got it. All right, Leilani Kilgore. I had a lot of fun talking to you. I told you it was a great conversation. She deserves to be a household name, and she definitely has the music and the work ethic to get there. As mentioned prior to the interview, you can find all her music on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, all your digital service providers. Check her out at Instagram at Leilani Kilgore, all one word, all one first name and last name together. That is Leilanikilgore. And as she mentioned as well, she is going to be on the road later in the year, so keep an eye out for her coming to a town near you. All right, once again, thank you for downloading. Thank you for checking us out. We know you have a lot of podcast choices for your podcast dollar. And I definitely appreciate you visiting our little podcast and giving a listen to another cool rock podcast. Share it, listen, tell your friends, whatever works. And we'll see you next time. As always, be good to yourself and be good to other people. Take care.